It's great to be back here at Store and with all of you today. I'm Eric Morris, and I lead Google's retail practice here in Canada.
And hi, everybody. Great to see you again this year. My name is Jennifer Lee, and I'm a partner at Deloitte. Well, I wanted to take you through a study that Google and Deloitte partnered on this year. We're really excited to share this with you because it will be the first time that we launched the study. So you get a first-hand view of what was completed. This was done over the last few months. Our sample size was 1,000 Canadians in Canada, 1,000 Americans, with a 2.5% margin of error rate. And we also conducted this time qualitative interviews with retailers across all segments across the country. And when we did the interviews, we asked provocative questions around the future of retail and what the challenges are for executives to try and execute an integrated experiencing leveraging digital and data. So we are really excited to take you through this today. So what did our interviews say? Well, first there was frustration because they want to do more. There's a feeling in Canada across the executives that if we don't stay ahead of where the consumer's at, not only will our global competition come and erode market share, but also we may not be able to retain the talent. Here are some of the quotes from the interviews that we want to share with you. The first one's around, it's essential we connect in-store and online, and we've been talking about that for years, but the challenge is the infrastructure has not yet been fully integrated. The role of the store and how the store strategy needs to integrate with the overall path to purchase, the contemplation of the store network and what it means for the organization, whether it's theatrical store experiences or more experiential discovery, yet the executives have not yet feel that they've landed on what the role of the store is. They also see the importance of digital and that digital is critical to the path, especially in the pre-purchase process, and we'll show you data around that today. And finally, that data is the great equalizer. Last year when I came and spoke at stores, we talked about the rise of the insight-driven organization, and Eric and I will talk about that more today. But there's a universal view across all segments of retail that data is one of the largest competitive advantages that retailers have, regardless of size. But there's also this flip side, this frustration that we saw amongst executives who said, but still, Canada is a digitally immature market. Why aren't we able to leapfrog the rest of the world? We have the talent, we have the thinking, so what's causing this? And we'd like to share that with you today. And finally, the Canadian retailers feel that there is a place for them in the global retail world and that there is an opportunity to lead. We just need to really step it up as executives, as an industry, to say, what do we think the future is going to look like and how do we support that? The study started off looking at the total market size of the e-commerce market in Canada. And I'm excited to share with you the numbers that came out of the report. We are not only growing by 30% till 2023, that's a $60 billion market here in Canada. If you look at the sheer size of the e-commerce market, what it's telling us is regardless of whether you're a large retailer, a pure play, a brand, there is opportunity for all of us. And the market is large enough to sustain all of us, but global competition is easily coming into the Canadian market. Honestly, when I talk to executives, the first question I ask is, who do you think your competition is? And often they're citing physical retailers down the street. And I think as Canadian businesses, we need to look at this and say, our competition is truly global. It's not just the Canadian competition. What we also found in this study is that the stores are not going away. There is a role for the store, and our data is showing that. 76% of monthly online consumers visit a store before they purchase. The role of the store is to validate the purchase, confirm that this is the product that they want, touch and feel, but the pre-purchase is done mostly online. 62% of online consumers want an in-store experience on their path to purchase. This doesn't mean you go open hundreds and hundreds of stores. What it means is strategically, you'll need physical space in order to validate your brand, whether that's wholesale or direct-to-consumer retail. Also, they want to shop locally. What was so exciting about our study is Canadians clearly said to us that they want to buy Canadian. The question I'd ask for everyone in this room is, are we making it easier for our customers to buy with us? Because if we don't make it easier, they're going somewhere else, and most likely they're going to global companies that are now shipping to Canada. 70% of Canadians have told us in our study that they want to support Canadian businesses.
And at Google, we know that Canadians want to shop locally. In the last 2 years, we've seen a 330% increase in near me searches on mobile phones by Canadians. Florists near me, shoe stores near me, hardware stores near me. Canadians literally using their smartphones, those personal shopping assistants, to help point them in the right direction and literally take them to stores. And this behavior is frequent, and it's really, really important. 57% of Canadians searched for a store near them in the last 2 days, and 76% of Canadians who searched for a store ended up visiting that store within 24 hours. And so we know, and we've heard over the last day and a half, that technology has changed how people shop and has changed that customer experience. The advent of technology and the internet, then accelerated by mobile. And what we're seeing today in Canada, in retail, is a great divide. And what I mean by that is it is a divide between the retailers who can rapidly and repeatedly adapt in this changing environment and thrive in that environment. The price of being on that wrong side, it's not about losing a few points of market share. It's not about maybe having to play catch up over the next few years. What's at stake, especially here in retail in Canada, is everything. Because if you are on the wrong side of that divide and the wrong side of that shift in how consumers have shopped today, it is an existential threat to your business. And the opportunity, which we're all here to talk about today, is how do you make sure as a retailer you are on that right side, and what can you do? And that's what we're going to spend the next 15 or so minutes talking about, and we have 3 ideas to share with you. And I think the first, and this is really, really important for retailers and executives in Canada, it is to shift your mindset. And I think shift it in 2 really important ways. The first is that I think there is this presumption that shopping has changed more or it has changed faster in the United States. And that is simply not true. These changes, it's not that just they're coming in Canada, they're here. They're here, it's now, it's accelerating, and it's really, really important for all of us, given those changes, to act with that sense of urgency that they require. So a lot of our research focused on how shoppers discover products. How do they discover the things that they want to buy, both online and in store? And so what you'll see are a few stats from the research. Canadians, of course, discover the things that they want to buy through traditional methods, whether it's a TV commercial, a flyer, or a coupon, radio. And they also discover the things that they want to buy, of course, in store. And so what you'll see here is that Canadians use those channels, and they do so more frequently than in the US. But what I think is most important here, the number one way that Canadians discover the things that they want to buy online and in store is online. 77% of Canadians discover the things that they want to buy online versus 72% in the US. Canadian shoppers are, in fact, leaders. We are more likely to discover the things that we want to buy online than US shoppers. And looking at e-commerce specifically, Canadians are just as likely to shop online. So the research showed that 82% of Canadians research and purchase online, virtually at par with the US, which is at 85%. And as a result, we are starting to close that much talked about e-commerce gap between Canada and the US. E-commerce represents, according to most third parties, about 8% of total retail sales in Canada, up from 7% a year ago. And again, closing that gap with the US, which has been around 10%. The caveat with stats like this always is that I believe, and all of us probably believe, it understates the impact of e-commerce in many of the products that we sell. And here's why. Total retail sales, the denominator of that stat, it includes grocery, where you couldn't buy things online and really only now can, and even then, it's not everywhere in Canada. It includes gas, it includes paint, it includes automotive, it includes flowers for your garden. It includes a lot of things that we buy but simply cannot buy online. And so when you strip that out and think about all of the other things that we buy, whether it is clothing, books, electronics, power tools, Many of these categories see far more than 8 or 10% in sales coming from online. It's 10, it's 20, it's 30, sometimes it's more than 50% of sales. This is really, really meaningful for many of the things that we buy today.
What's really important, though, is how big Canadian businesses set themselves up for success. Like, when I spoke last year at the Stores event, we introduced this concept around purple teams. And we wanted today to reintroduce the concept because the frustration that we felt during the interviews when we were talking to executives around execution of an integrated omni-channel strategy came down to construction of teams. So they often cited silos in their organization, silos of people and data. Now, last year when I talked about purple teams, I introduced this concept of these red people. And these are we'll call them, for lack of better words, your propeller heads. These guys are technical. They're the data scientists. They're the ones who are doing the SAS, SQL, Python programming. And they're the ones that if you put them in front of your executives, most likely they'll scare them. And so these people are important to the team, but at the same time, they're not all the team in terms of being an insight-driven organization. So we started adding this concept of blue people in. And blue people are those who are merchants, finance, marketing, the real functional areas of the business. And we proposed to clients over the last few years that if you actually take red and blue people and mix them together, you suddenly create purple teams. So years ago, we thought about purple people. And then I was actually executing a number of assignments for clients, and we started realizing people who are purple and encompass all these characteristics are like unicorns. Not only are they extremely expensive to hire, but they're actually very difficult to retain. So what we decided was that the concept of purple teams was actually a smarter concept. Can we construct teams that are made up of 6 to 8 people who bring together these skill sets to execute an omni-channel strategy? So everything Eric and I are talking about today requires us as businesses to break down the silos. Now, it's unrealistic to think that tomorrow we're going to start mixing budgets, integrating teams, but what we can do as executives are create pods of purple teams around the organization to get them to start working together. For us, this is a huge enabler to everything Eric just talked about on the importance of digital in the path to purchase.
And so recommendation number 1, that mindset shift, that these changes are here in Canada and that organizationally our teams need to work better together. Idea number 2, to be on the right side of that divide, is to focus on the customer and that digital experience. And this is really, really important. Our research found 89% of Canadians are choosing the retailers they purchase from, again, online or in-store, based on the quality of the digital experience. Your website, your app, in most cases, it is the primary interaction shoppers have with your brand. It is the first store that they visit and often the most important store that they visit. Treat it with the importance that it deserves. And I think one of the other interesting things that emerged from our research is Canadians shop online 12% less frequently than American shoppers. And I think this is really interesting and ties back to experience. I think we haven't been as focused on having an amazing digital experience as our US peers. And as a result, yes, Canadians shop online, but they may not do so as frequently because the experience hasn't been up to par. And so what can you do to have an amazing digital experience? A few ideas here. The first is that when people are looking for you, when they're looking for your products, be found. 90% of Canadians, when they come online to shop, are undecided about the brand that they're looking for. Be helpful in helping consumers narrow down all of the choices they want to make. And, I would suggest during the break, not during the presentation, during the break, but pull out your phones and think like a shopper. Think like one of your customers. If you sell power tools or you sell shoes or yoga pants and someone goes looking for you on Google or somewhere else, do they find you? Do they find your store? Or do they find someone else? And at Google, we see similar sort of behavior. So Canadians are coming coming to Google looking for help and ideas on how to narrow down all of those choices. We've seen a 40% increase in searches for gift ideas related to a given product, and a 70% increase in searches for people looking for the best place to buy something. When someone searches for that as it relates to your business and your store, do they find you or do they find someone else? I was here last year, and I think one of the interesting changes we've seen at Google over the last year is the role that video plays in helping people discover and narrow down the choices when they want to buy something. So we've seen a 100% increase in video watch time on YouTube for which products to buy. 55% of Canadians, when they search for a product on Google, at some point along that purchase journey, also watch a video related to that product. And 90% of Canadians say that they discover a product that they want to buy through YouTube. Video is an increasingly important part of the purchase process. And again, think like a shopper. Go to YouTube or another video site. Search for one of your products. Do people find you and your reviews and the things that you sell? Or do they find someone else? So focus on discovery. Focus on personalization. The headline here is that most businesses, retailers included, are drastically underinvested in creating a personalized digital experience. The best-in-class retailers, and we know who many of them are, overinvest here 30 times more than the average. And think about the amazing digital experiences that you have. There's hundreds of people in the room here. When we all open up our Netflix account, we all have a different experience in that app based on the shows that we watch and what we're most likely to watch next. Netflix is highly personalized based on our experience. Contrast that to your website or your store, right? Does somebody who shop at your store get an experience fundamentally different than someone who has never been to your site before? Do we treat people digitally the same, whether they're your best or your worst customers? And this is really, really important here. In most cases in retail, every single website looks the same. The homepage is the same, the emails are the same, the checkout experience is the same, whether you've shopped there or never shopped there. And that really needs to change. Canadians will share their preferences with you and with businesses if they get something back. 78% of Canadians will share personal information with a retailer. It's a value exchange. If as a shopper, right, I share my preferences on the things I like to buy and how I like to buy it, I'm far more likely to get recommendations and offers that are meaningful to me, and I'm more likely to shop with you. Reducing friction is so important, and I think there's a couple interesting angles here. The first is around shipping. People want shipping options, and they want to control their delivery times. So 90% of Canadians, we want shipping options. We want to control our delivery times. I can't have a 4 or an 8-hour window for delivery if I'm at work and I'm not home. And Canadians want to have a frictionless return experience. I'm not that likely to return something, but if I do, please make it easy. So these seem obvious, but there's lots of retailers, lots of us in the room who do this better than others. And again, there's a divide here in terms of reducing friction. For those of you who were at store last year, I spent a lot of time talking about reducing the friction of that digital experience. If the mobile website is the first touch point of your brand, the most important store that people go to, whether they buy on the phone or they use it to influence an in-store purchase, is it a great digital experience? Do you treat it like your best store? Right? Or is it left with the IT team and we don't think about how well it performs and the customer experience we deliver? So last year I showed a slide here where we took the top 14 retailers in Canada and we timed with a tool that you can Google, test my website, and see how long it takes for your mobile website to load on a 4G network. And so these are the top retailers in Canada. You'll see huge variance. There is one retailer that is very big and spends a lot of time thinking about this, whose mobile website loads in just 1.2 seconds. It's even faster than it was a year ago. It loads 2, 3, 4 times faster than many other retailers. And I'd encourage you, try buying something on Amazon, try buying something from any Shopify store, and see how long it takes you to buy something and how amazing and easy it is, and then compare that to your own experience. Is it fast or is it slow? And the research at Google suggests that for every second above 3 seconds in load time, you lose 20% of your sales. This is so important. In the last year, retailer websites have gotten faster, which is great, but here too is a great divide. 8 of the largest retailers in Canada are faster than they were a year ago. 6 are actually slower and not even looking at it. And I wanted to end here, the last way to create an amazing digital and customer experience is to think about what's next. So I think for many of us, Google included, mobile changed the world and caught many of us off guard. And so as businesses, we need to think about the now, and we need to think about the next. And so what are those changes that are going to be big and important to our business a year, 2 years, 3 years from now? And so what our research uncovered among a younger cohort is two things. One is customers want mobile payment options, and shoppers also want to shop in new ways, augmented reality and virtual reality being top of mind. So it's great that I can see a picture of a couch or a coffee table on my phone with a picture that's this big. It's even better if I can hold up my phone and using augmented reality, see what that couch or coffee table looks like in my own living room. That's going to reduce friction and create a far better shopping experience.
So we talked about the outcome of our research. We're making the case to you that Canadians want to buy Canadian. Are you making it easier for them to buy? We're also demonstrating that digital plays a huge role in the path to purchase, as does the store. So when we often talk to clients, they say, I understand the case, I intellectually get it. How do I do that? And our view is the rise of the insight-driven organization and executives embracing this mindset is a determination between you're on one side of the divide or the other side of the divide that Eric talked about earlier. What we showed in our research was that insight-driven organizations only make up 23% of the businesses in Canada, whereas the US, they're at 46%. We are half of the US in terms of our mindset of thinking about how to bring data and digital together to drive insight on the consumer. And so when our research also showed that insight-driven organizations, there's components of where the gap sits. And so we wanted to share with you some statistics that are really important. 63% of Canadians says, we lack C-suite leadership in thinking about data, digital, and bringing the store together. So if our executives don't get it, how are we supposed to get it as operational employees in the organization? 66% said, the data that even we get, we don't know what to do with. There's no way to really analyze the data or absorb it in the way that I can absorb it. It's either through programming or spreadsheets. We need to be able to visualize this data in a dynamic way. 78% said that there's challenges in even trying to bring AI. Don't even talk to us about AI because we won't be able to integrate it. 78% said cognitive technologies are a challenge because the data sits everywhere and there's no way to manage it. And 92% said we actually lack overall data governance. So the data sitting on Bob, Fred, and Sally's computers, we haven't yet determined who the data steward is. People are changing data sets and have permission to touch the data no matter where they sit within the organization. And 14% said the fact that we have data sitting everywhere means that we don't have a centralized data hub. Now, data lakes are a whole different story for another day and how challenging that is. But the fact that we don't have clear data governance and C-suite leadership goes to the root as to how Canada is falling behind in winning Canadians over in the path to purchase. So let me leave you with a great stat. That in our research, organizations that translate insight into action are 18% more successful and 23% more profitable. There is a true business case for every executive in this room to challenge your C-suite on why data has become so important. And so when Eric and I were summarizing the research, we said, we want to do the research, we want to convince businesses at the Stores event that digital and data are critical to the path to purchase and winning the consumer. But how do we bring it all together, and what kind of framework could you take home with you? In our research, we broke our cohort into 3 areas: large retailers, pure play retailers, and brands. And so each of you in the room should be able to relate to the framework that we're talking about. This is a large retailer. And if I'm a large retailer, most likely I have lots of stores and I've invested a huge amount into a store network and labor costs. And if you look at the y-axis of this framework is around the physical store. The x-axis is around how digital you are, and your aspiration is to get very, very top to the right, which is to become an insight-driven organization. Our research showed that Canadian retailers are very high in physical location, very low on digital. And when we actually segmented the customer that shops in a large retailer, they told us that they're highly digital. So where you need to be as a business, as a large retailer, is in the top middle, moving to the right. Highly digital, leveraging your store network, and supporting your store network with digital. The mindset of large retailers are ones where they understand that complexity. There's no way you're going to be starting to close hundreds and hundreds of stores, but you're going to use digital to drive traffic. A good example is Loblaws. They actually just announced that they're going to be doing personalized advertising and trying to integrate the channels through PC Express and their market division stores through their Optimum program. So this is just a great Canadian success story of how executives within the Loblaws network are starting to transition to more of an integrative mindset to become an insight-driven organization. But if you're a brand in the room and you may not have 1,500 stores, how do you think about digital? And really, digital is about storytelling. And if you're a leading retailer who's a brand in the room, you're starting to look at what's the complex ecosystem that I need to get my brand story to come alive. And often, it's leveraging your wholesale and your retail channels, but using digital to tell the brand story and really capture the imagination of the consumer. Canada Goose is a great example of this. Canada Goose actually uses their store network as a way to activate the consumer in the path to purchase. We just showed you that over 70% of consumers show up in the store before they buy, and creating the cold room to try on the jacket and really experience it before you go and outlay $1,000 on a jacket is a clever way to think about the role of the store, but have a very, very deep digital presence. Also, they've gone global, but they're not going to be necessarily opening hundreds and hundreds of stores because that's what their wholesale network is for, but rather create experiences in the key stores that they have built themselves and are branded Canada Goose. For those pure plays in the room, we started thinking about, if I'm a pure play, what do? I don't have a store network, but I have invested in digital. And this mindset is actually using what Eric talked earlier about technology and digital investments like VR and AR as a way to capture the imagination of customers. The technology investments are what help imagine the product in your own setting, but also it minimizes returns. So thinking through the investment that you need in digital and technology investments to win in the consumer's path to purchase matters. And so our hope is that you can take away these frameworks and start thinking about not only using digital and data to become an insight-driven organization, but also helping your executives think through what are the strategic moves that we need to make in order to win. Jeweler is a great example of a pure play, a Canadian success story. I was on as one of the judges for the Canada Post Awards, and we selected Jewel last year as one of the winners. Why? Because it's personalized experience, which Eric talked about earlier. The fact that they're a pure play Canadian retailer that understands, a frictionless experience. They also have a great online experience where you can interact and create your own product through personalization. So these are just examples of Canadian businesses that are best in class, in our opinion. We spent a lot of time debating who can we put as examples to showcase Canadian success. Because often when you go to presentations, they talk about global success stories or US, and we have them here in Canada.
So we know that our industry has changed, and shopping has changed, and the customer has changed. That is not something new, but it has divided our industry. And we have retailers, all of us in the room, fall on one end of this great divide. And if you are on the wrong side of the divide, it is a threat to your business. The right side of the divide, it's a huge opportunity to deliver an amazing customer experience and grow your business. And to ensure you are on the right side, have that mindset about what's happening here in this market, encourage your teams to work together, relentlessly, maniacally focus on delivering an amazing customer and digital experience.
I also think that to the other tools, are you becoming an insight-driven organization? Are you enacting these frameworks that we've presented today? We've put a lot of thought onto answering the how. How do you get teams to work together? How do you construct the right teams and shift the mindset? And so We hope that the study has been useful to you. You obviously get access to it through the Google Deloitte partnership, and we'll make sure you can get a copy of it. But we're hopeful that this will help you create the case to your executive teams that these 3 areas that we've listed above are actually within your reach.
Thanks very much, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.